Perfect. So let's jump now to FIFA then, Rob. Obviously, that's where you are at the moment. So I understand you can't tell us everything in terms of the secrets and stuff behind there, but we'll try and get as much out of you as we can. So firstly, in terms of that, the department of analytics at FIFA, like what does that look like, Rob, in terms of how many people are in there? Like, are you overseeing them as well? How does that look?
No. So I mean, when I talked earlier in terms of that kind of ideal setup of having data analysts, data scientists, data engineers, we are very fortunate to have a really outstanding team of people set up there. So we have a couple of data engineers, a couple of data scientists, and a couple of data analysts as well. So it's a reasonable sized team, but we've got people kind of specialized across the different areas to be able to access the data. So we're working with event data, we're working with tracking data, we're supporting kind of the in-game as well as post-game as well. So naturally, there's a little bit more resource there to support that. So we're really fortunate to have some really good, really intelligent guys there. Both of our data scientists are doctors, for example. So again, it goes back to what I mentioned before. They've got that really good theoretical understanding and really good practical application of data in kind of real world scenarios before they came across into the football world. So we're really lucky there to have some really good people and some good resource put into that. It really helps us get that environment into a really good position. And like for myself personally, as and when I might move on, so I've now got a much better understanding for myself of what a really good environment should look like and kind of how to apply that elsewhere.
So cause you mentioned earlier, I think you kind of part of your job is to liaise with the non-technical people as well. So like, who do you report to then, Rob? Who's your boss, but who also is the people that you are delivering these messages to? Who you're speaking to the most, really?
Yeah, sure. So I report to a guy called Harry Lowe. He's the head of football performance analysis. He reports up into Tom Gardner, who's the head of football performance insights. As mentioned, Tom was previously at Everton as head of the analysis team. Harry was previously at Swansea City and also with the Chinese national team just at the start of COVID, which was a great time to be involved with the Chinese Football Association, as you can imagine. No, they're both really good guys. So my role is predominantly the link between kind of our data science team and then kind of the technical experts. So, when we've got tournaments on, so we've just finished a couple of tournaments. We had the Women's Under-20 World Cup, for example, that was won by North Korea a few weeks ago, just finished. And we've got the Women's Under-17 World Cup starts in Dominican Republic next week, middle of October as well. So we'll be supporting the technical experts who are on site out there. I'm not sure who they're going to be at this stage, but they will generally be former footballers, former players, former coaches. So got a really good technical understanding of the game. So they will go and watch matches. Very similar setup if you've seen a Champions League for example, with UEFA. They call them technical observers, excuse me, but essentially there'll be people who've worked in football before with a really good technical understanding, who can make observations based on what they see in the game. We will try to marry that up with what we see in the data. As I say, it doesn't necessarily always work. Sometimes you do find things that don't necessarily back up what they're seeing on the pitch, but we're trying to support their observations and then also try and use the data to try and find trends, for example. So, what is a particular trend we've seen? So a really good example from a FIFA perspective is, if you were to go back and look at the 2010 World Cup or the 2014 World Cup, you're probably not going to find centre-backs, carrying the ball out. I'm a big Arsenal fan. We bought Ricardo Calafiori recently. He's quite happy carrying the ball pretty much from one end of the pitch to the other. You're probably not going to find those kind of trends back in the day. But these days, increasingly, it's very common that you'll see centre-backs, full-backs, for example, very comfortable on the ball, goalkeepers, for example, as well. So, we're trying to find those kind of trends within tournaments as well. So sometimes that's looking back against the previous tournament to try and see are there changes in how it's developing. As I say, we work across senior and youth tournaments as well. So we're trying to think a bit more around kind of the overarching development of the game. So in the women's game, for example, which is obviously a little bit more developing at the moment, you've got data for Under-17 World Cup, Under-20 World Cup, the Senior World Cup. So we can look at what the differences are between those kind of longitudinal basis and try and help, for example, the FIFA women's football team, football performance team think about the development of the women's game, for example.
So because when you joined FIFA, again, just on your profile, Rob, so you joined it was football project manager. Now you are football data insights analyst. So what's the difference there then? What were you doing before and that's different to what you're doing now?
Yeah. So I originally joined. So Chris Loxton, who you had on the podcast before, was in charge of the project in the early days. So he brought me in initially to head up the data collection team. So I think as he talked about at the time, FIFA collects their own data, have a large team of analysts collecting the information. My role at the time was to come in and get that operational They just literally in the days before I joined, they just kind of captured the data for their first tournament. And in the build up to the 2022 World Cup, my role really at the beginning was to come in and try and help structure that and make sure that the data collection process was working as intended, and the data was passed over to the data science team to be turned into the various outputs that were being used at the time for the teams, for internal analysis, etc. So I did that up until the end of 2021. And then there was kind of realization that nobody was using the data that we had internally. It was quite a good skill set of mine, so I kind of moved across into that role ahead of the World Cup to start actually making use of the data and try and support the various different areas of FIFA with that data as well. So that's what I've been doing for a while. We're now kind of moving. My focus now, I'm now kind of moving more towards using Python for a lot of data analysis. So that's kind of been a lot of my focus in the last year or so, has been starting to upskill myself on that tool and kind of how to use that and kind of move away from some of the tools I've used previously, because that's kind of again, we've got a very well-established team. They're all very competent Python users. I'm sure many more tools as well. So trying to kind of align myself and fit inside those processes as well. So it's been a really good learning environment for me the past year or so as well.